Prediction and concern turns to reality. It was a comfortable, sunny fall day near the beginning of September 2018, around 10 o'clock a.m. when the entire west coast of the United States dropped 2 feet. It was estimated that nearly 10 million electrical transformers were no longer attached to power poles. Power west of the Cascades in Washington and Oregon and the Sierra Mountain Range in California was almost non-existent. The phone service was spotty at best. The one thing it did trigger was the school evacuation with the familiar name of "Grab the Kids and Run." It was estimated that 4 to 5 million children were moved east towards the mountains. From all accounts, this also happened on the East Coast and all over the world. By 4 p.m., the area west of the San Andreas Fault was continuously moving, sliding into the Pacific Ocean. By 8 p.m., Los Angeles area and San Francisco were gone. The sinking land killed millions who believed they could just get in their boats and be safe or wait until tomorrow to get ready. The whirlpools caused by the sinking land pulled everything under. Even some of the smaller Navy ships were lost. The scientists called it the normalcy factor. The highway patrols in each of the western states did not allow westbound traffic on all highways heading east. That plan saved millions. New York disappeared in the blink of an eye. The earth changes raised the oceans almost 10 feet worldwide. The meeting point for John Taylor and those that followed him was the north end of Lake Washington. The trigger was when the electricity went off to turn on one of the walkie-talkies that John had purchased. John announced, "Going fishing," many times over the next 4 hours. That was the code to saddle up and get out of town. As they left, they drove over, power lines by the hundreds. Water and gas lines were leaking, and people were just ignoring it and driving around them. There were fires, cracks in the roads, and many thousands of buildings damaged from the earthquakes and land movements. John, Jenny, Peter, and Patty were riding in the RV, pulling the XB on a trailer, and it took them 3 hours to make the 8 miles from their apartment to Lake Washington. When they got there, it almost seemed that everyone had left. They got out and looked around. They found a dozen others, and then almost every minute, several drove up. By the time the 4-hour time limit had expired, there were thousands. They packed up and headed east. Every mile was an adventure, and it seemed it would take an eternity to get to safety. John continued to lead the caravan of thousands north. They made one stop, picking up some friends to add to the caravan. Then they headed east. The main interstates were clogged. John laughed when a convoy of police vehicles from a variety of departments passed him using the westbound lane. About halfway up the mountain, the right lane became clogged. A patrolman was there and waved John over to the westbound lane, and the vehicles in John's convoy followed him up to the crest of the Cascade Mountains. They pulled off the road near the top into the parking for the ski resorts. John and Jenny wanted to know how their friends and family were doing. After meeting and assuring all had made it, John was looking west and could make out water in the far distance coming towards them. It would take a little time, but it seemed that much of what they could see would be hundreds of feet underwater. "Please, God, let Johnny make it to safety," John said a prayer for his son. A month before John had tried to contact his son, he'd left 3 messages and gotten no answer. He said a prayer every day. Jenny tried to comfort her partner. "Matthew is with them. He won't let them die." Jenny tried to hide her smile. She'd met Teresa in a class and had a long lunch with her and knew what was going on. "I hope so. Please, God, let it be." John took a deep breath. "We better keep going." As they turned on, there were Johnny and Teresa with big smiles on their faces. "Sorry, Dad. I was a bit busy taking classes that a neighbor of mine, Bill McCormick, recommended. I have been doing what you used to do. Remember those 100-hour weeks? Teresa told me she was pregnant, and it took a few days for me to come around to the idea I was going to be a dad." Everyone laughed as Teresa hit Johnny on the arm. They hugged, and John was wiping tears and realized everyone else was too. John hugged Teresa. "So this means I'm going to be a grandpa, and I understand from your lady that you're going to be a daddy again." Teresa laughed. "Did you see them, Dad?" Johnny asked. "See who?" John asked. "Those 2 boys of ours. One was standing on that big rock down there. The other was across the road. They're already watching our backs, Dad." Johnny smiled. "Thank God." John nodded. "Let's go. We have a way to go yet." John took his son's hand and Jenny's, and Johnny grabbed onto Teresa's hand and the four matched up to the parking place. Johnny told Bill McCormick they were riding with his dad. Bill was happy to see the rift between father and son healed. Patty and Peter joined Bill and Nancy, letting father and son talk. A couple of months back, Bill had been over at Johnny's having a get-together for the 4th of July, and Johnny mentioned he was going to build a deck. Bill said he didn't have a clue how to build things. Johnny said it was in his blood. He was a fourth-generation carpenter. Bill also mentioned earth changes were going to happen, and they were going to have to move in 2 or 3 months. Johnny asked, "Where in the hell did you hear that from?" "From Father John Taylor." Bill looked puzzled. "He's an accountant who is also a carpenter. That's my dad. What kind of bullshit is he spouting now?" "No, wait, I'm not interested in hearing it. You want another beer?" Johnny got up to see if it was time to put the steaks on the barbecue yet. "Yes." Bill sat there thinking, how in the world do I tell a son that his dad is the Christ of the planet? I guess I need to demonstrate. Bill jumped up and told everyone he would be right back. He went next door and grabbed his revolver and the folder full of the newspaper clippings and copies of the commendations about the 2 bank robbers he and his partner killed. He found his wife back at Johnny's home and handed her the revolver. "Take this. Tell Teresa you want to show her something and bring her out. Have her sit next to Johnny, and then when I nod, point the gun and shoot at me." "How are we going to get away with shooting a gun? Won't the neighbors say something?" Nancy asked. "This is the 4th of July. If anybody asks, we'll tell them it's a big firecracker." Bill laughed. "Why are we doing this?" Nancy asked. "Johnny, he is Father John's son. They haven't talked for 2 or 3 years, and Johnny doesn't believe anything his dad is involved with," Bill whispered. "And you feel a demonstration might crack that door?" Nancy nodded. "Okay." When things were set, the gun fired. Teresa screamed. As the bullet floated in front of Bill, he looked over and saw Johnny's mouth hang open in wonder. Bill reached out for the spinning bullet and handed it to Johnny. Johnny dropped it and reached down and picked it back up, placing it on the little table. "Where did you learn that?" Johnny asked as Teresa listened. "From your father." Bill handed Johnny the folder. "Take some time in the next day and read this." Teresa grabbed the file and started going through everything. She kept saying, "Oh, Johnny. Oh, Johnny," as she skimmed everything. "You have got to talk with your dad." "Bill, can you teach me? I mean us?" Johnny was holding the bullet now, and he looked to his wife as she nodded. "Yes, I'm at the teacher level, and I'm learning to transport. How long before the stakes?" Bill looked to Nancy. She nodded. "If we put them on in 45 minutes, then we'll be eating by noon." Teresa had seen the look between Bill and Nancy. "What do you guys have in mind? Not that I'm totally against new and unusual things like shooting guns at people." Everyone laughed. "Your father taught us how to visit a very special place. With your permission, I would like to take us there. I want to also say that once you learn how you can go back again and again," Bill shared. Johnny was still holding the bullet. He set it on the table and looked to Teresa. Got a nod. "Okay, we're ready. Close your eyes, please." It took Bill just a few seconds, and then they were standing before God as they opened their eyes. "What is this?" Johnny asked. He was standing next to Bill. Nancy had taken Teresa's hand and guided her towards the Christ ports. "This is the center of our universe. This is what we call God and have been trying to define and describe since the beginning of recorded history." Bill looked around and waved at some familiar faces. Bill assured Johnny, "God will always tell you the truth. Ask your questions." Johnny touched the surface of God after watching Bill place his hand. Johnny wanted to know everything about the man he thought was a loony bird. A Vietnam vet, his dad was most likely off his rocker. After many questions, his emotions rose to the surface. He hugged himself as his eyes filled with tears. He had the best father in the world, and he had not been able to see it. He had pulled away from his dad 5 years ago, believing in something his mother had said, and now he understood it was a lie. He chose to believe it, even though he suspected then that it was untrue. His mother's issue was with her father. He knew now his dad had been faithful, and it was his mother who pushed him away. She had not felt worthy of a relationship that lasted longer than her mom's. His dad hung on for 3 years, hearing only "take out the garbage, take care of the boy, and do you have any money?" He also heard, "It's none of your business." Johnny didn't understand until Teresa got angry at him, and then she didn't speak to him for a day. That was as close to hell as he ever wanted to be. His dad lived in that hell with no love, no emotions, no words, because he wanted to be close to his son for 3 years. Then it had hit Johnny like a ton of bricks. He had fallen for the valuing of being right as more important than getting what he wanted, a human mistake that we all face on occasion. Teresa touched Johnny. "Are you okay?" Johnny reached out and hugged Teresa so tight. She was having trouble breathing, and then she realized her husband needed her at that moment, and she melted into the hug. Her shoulder became wet from Johnny's tears. His body was releasing gut-wrenching sobs. Teresa realized she was going to get a new version of this man she loved. He would likely be more loving, more playful, and happier. She smiled as she thought, wait until he sees his boy. Bill and Nancy were talking to Matt, Bert, and Gaia when a little girl came up to them. Gaia introduced Maria to the McCormick family. "Go ahead, Maria, ask them. Bill and Nancy are nice people." Gaia pushed a bit. "When Maria is born and grows up, she is going to help me bring in the peace. She's looking for a mommy and daddy." Bill and Nancy did one of those silent decision things that married couples have been doing since Adam and Eve. Nancy smiled as she held out her hands. "Come here, honey. I'll be your mommy." Nancy laughed as the little girl flew into her outstretched arms. They were getting to know each other as Johnny and Teresa came up, walking hand in hand. "One of those boys is going to be your son. The other is your brother. The bigger girl is going to be your sister," Teresa whispered. "Who is our son?" Johnny asked. "Give you a kiss if you find out." Teresa laughed as she watched her husband take 3 quick steps and then slide on his knees with his hands out. The 4 children all moved to Johnny before he had stopped. They tackled him and ended up in a dog pile. All were laughing and screaming as he tickled them. "Who's my son?" Johnny asked. One of the boys hugging him moved up so he could see his dad. "Me, Daddy. I'm Matthew John Taylor." Matt gave his dad a big smile. Johnny kissed him. "Nice to meet you, Matthew John Taylor." Johnny shared a tear of pride in his eye. "I have a brother and a sister?" Johnny asked. "Yes, big brother." Both Robert and Gaia answered, then giggled. "Nice to meet you, brother and sister." Johnny kissed both. Johnny then turned to the 4th child. "Who are you?" Johnny asked. "I'm M&M, Maria McCormick. I'm going to be your secretary when you are the boss." The little girl answered. "I'm going to teach all of you how to be the boss." "What am I going to be the boss of?" Johnny asked. "The world." The little girl kissed Johnny on the cheek. "Let me get up, kids." Johnny rose to his feet. "Are you wondering how you become the boss?" Gaia asked. "Yes, little sister. I've never been the boss of anything." Johnny frowned. "Well, when Teresa says I am." Gaia led Johnny over to the Christports. There were 4 seats today. When the adults were all seated, the kids joined them. Gaia was in Johnny's lap, talking with him as he worked through the questions. "We have a bit of work to do," Johnny said aloud. "Yes, big brother." Gaia kissed Johnny again. "We do. On the road again. You feel comfortable driving this rig?" John asked his son as they neared one of the 400 Class A monsters John had purchased. Peter was standing on top of an identical unit. "Yeah, Dad. Bill and I have been learning how to drive them for the last couple of weekends," Johnny shared. "Peter, let's head out. We've got many miles to go." John watched as Peter turned his megaphone on. "Aye, aye, Father John," Peter said over the megaphone. "Saddle up, everybody. We're heading out." As they climbed aboard, John grabbed his radio, which was one of 2,000 in the convoy. He turned it on and flipped the talk button. Jenny was sitting next to Teresa. "Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, we made it. The water is behind us. Our next stop is Omak. We've got about 120 miles as the crow flies. It will take us 3 to 4 hours to get there. When we get to Omak, I understand there is a shopping center there that has gone out of business. We've bought it. That may be our temporary destination. We have Captain Frank and his team there finding us a parking place. If we find a place about halfway, we will stop and take a few minutes to change drivers and have a pit stop. Be sure to drink water. We are moving into more of a desert region than we are accustomed to. John switched channels. Peter, did we ever get a final count? Over. Yup, just over 10,000. The chief is still bringing up the rear. He has relayed to me that we've had about 40 vehicles pulling behind him. That could add 100 people or more to our numbers easily. Over, Peter shared. Thank you, Peter. Over and out. John looked at his phone. That young man had to walk away from millions of dollars of real estate and was on a sure path through the UW. He sounds like he is holding up fine. I understand you performed a marriage for Peter and Patty, Johnny added, in front of God. John nodded. I've promised a young lady that if we ever get 3 days off, I will marry her in a heartbeat. John looked over at his son. Will you be my best man? Dad, are you sure? There are thousands of men and women behind us that are willing to take a bullet for you. When I walk among them, I feel like a prince. I get people bowing to me and handshakes and glad to meet yous by the hundreds. Johnny was expertly handling the big rig. I would be proud and honored to have you stand as my best man. John was able to relay this from his heart. Thank you, Dad. I feel like maybe I'm forgiven. Johnny kept his eyes on the road. For the last 5 years, yes, you are forgiven. For the last 3 or 4 weeks, hell no. John laughed. I get to be a parent again. I need to practice on you. My God, Dad, I don't know if the world is ready for 2 more Taylors. These 2 are not going to be like children. They are going to be warriors watching my back, and when they are young men, they are going to be watching your back. John shared. I don't know anything about economics. You are going to have to teach me, Dad. Johnny was worried. Son, it is simple. We put people back to work. The realtor said the county is broke, and there are millions of dollars worth of sidewalks, road improvements, bicycle lanes, and other improvements that were all started before the last downturn in the economy and had to be stopped when the state stopped paying on improvement grants for communities. As people felt the effects of the monetary system failing, the earth reflected that same thing, and the result is the earth changes. John paused for a minute as Johnny handled a sharp turn. We have to teach everyone that our moods, attitudes, and emotions affect everything around us, including the earth. That is what is keeping Gaia away for 33 years. His cell phone rang. John here. Where's here? This is the Cap in Omak. John said so Johnny would understand who was on the line. Johnny, how many miles? John asked. We're 40 miles past the mountains. Johnny smiled. See you soon. Keep the lights on. I see more mountains ahead of us if we lose connection. I will call you back when we have a connection again, John informed. Margaret needs to talk. Captain Frank was replaced by a Western cowgirl. John, listen up. I bought you an out-of-business trailer court should handle as many as 200 RVs. They will have to double up on the facilities. But what the hell? They will have water, electricity, and a sewage hookup. There is land available where we may be able to continue the sewage lines and be able to hook up 200 more. The shopping center had a mattress store, and they went out of business, and there must be 1,000 mattresses in there. Her voice faded out as the call was cut short. John called back as soon as he had a connection. Way to go, Margaret. Keep working with Captain Frank. We have 10,000 bodies coming at you. The call cut off again. Dad, is that Captain Frank that I met? Johnny asked. That's him. I was there when Bill introduced him to you. Jenny inserted. I thought you looked familiar. Johnny laughed. What was I to do? Introduce myself as your dad's pregnant girlfriend? Jenny chortled. I've talked with the kids. They told me they witnessed the 2 of you standing before God sharing your love and vows. Kids are okay with Grandpa and Grandma. Everybody laughed. Dad has asked me to be his best man, so there is going to be another sharing of vows for the rest of us to witness. Mom! Johnny, you are 18 years older than me. Call me Mom if you want, but I may call you Sir. Jenny giggled. Okay, Mom. You make my dad happy. You deserve the title and respect. Johnny glanced at Jenny in the rearview mirror. John called 3 different times and was able to talk with Margaret for another 4 or 5 minutes. She informed him she had spent $3,000 at the hardware store in town, getting the keys copied and numbered as he wanted them. This meant that she could compile a typed list as to where each key went to throughout the communities. John asked Margaret how many people currently lived in Omak and Okanagan County. She responded that there were 2,000 and 20,000 respectively. Those numbers appeared to be down about half from just a few years ago. John shared with her that he expected the population to double or triple this fall. John looked at the date and realized that in September, fall was already upon them. He looked at Jenny with concern in his eyes. "What's wrong, John?" Jenny asked. "I'm afraid for the kids. There are going to be thousands, even hundreds of thousands of kids without families." John envisioned, "We need to protect them from the weather. It gets cold over here, sometimes even 10 or 20 below zero. We will make it okay, honey. We will set the example and take in 5, 6, or 7 children if we need to. We will make it work." Jenny smiled. John saw in his mind a 15 to a 16-year-old boy with sandy hair looking at him. John nodded, and the boy smiled, and the vision was gone. John looked at Jenny and said, "Okay, I love you." Jenny gave him a $1 million smile. Teresa asked her a question, and the two ladies were off again, passing the miles in companionship. "Dad, Diablo is up ahead. Feel like a pit stop, then taking us home?" Johnny asked. John was looking at the map. "Yes, that will leave us with about an hour and a half of travel. That is doable." John got on the radio and announced that they were going to make a pit stop and change drivers. Johnny put the flashers on and slowly pulled the big rig to a stop in the eastbound lanes of the highway. There were thousands of vehicles behind them. John had purchased 400 RVs and had another 20 semis, each of which was packed a foot deep in coins, gold or silver, and then stacked full of MREs or other dehydrated food. The Cap and his gang had taken the trucks ahead of them to Omak already. Even in this and many other RVs, there was a ton of gold. John opened the door of the RV and stepped out. Almost immediately, John found himself on high alert. There was a different sound. It did not belong in this paradise. John looked up and realized there was a helicopter hovering almost directly overhead. John saw a flash. "Shields!" he yelled. When the .50 caliber round struck John's shield right above his head, it drove him to his knees. Having been shot straight down, the bullet lost none of its muzzle velocity. John returned the round with 10 times the energy and speed. The round went through the shooter, hardly slowing even for the flak jackets. It passed through part of the engine and nicked one of the blades, causing it to break off and fly away from the helicopter. Johnny, Jenny, and Teresa all followed John out of the RV and watched as the helicopter went from being a bird of the sky to a piece of junk as it fell hard to the south. The explosion was still echoing off the hills when John regained his feet. "There is another one up there somewhere," John announced, still hearing the all-too-familiar womp 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 sound from his days in Vietnam. Johnny yelled, "There!" as he pointed to the east. As John turned to look, there was a rocket flying at them. John lifted the rocket and then had it do a complete circle, causing it to fly back towards the retreating helicopter. The helicopter was hit and fell from the sky. When knees quit shaking and everyone's breathing was more normal, John focused on what was in front of them. A herd of deer, maybe 40 of them. As a young man, he could often get within 10 feet of a deer. "I'll get them out of our way, Dad." Johnny was going to scare them away. "Johnny, wait a second. Let me ask them what they want." John moved slowly and even went among the herd. The biggest male with a rack of horns was in the center of the herd. When John faced him, the old-timer bowed to John. John returned the bow. "John heard we need water. The woods are dry. If the fire comes, we will lose all our food and this cycle is already down. If I bring food, where is a good spot to leave it for you?" John asked. "Behind the building." The big deer looked at the ranger station. John looked over at the station and saw 3 rangers standing and watching the meeting. "I will bring food and water. I will talk with Mother Earth about the rains." John felt pretty good. He was holding his arms out, and the deer were touching his hands and licking his palms. As the deer turned to leave, John bowed and moved towards the rangers. There were standard introductions and handshakes all around. Ranger 1, a gentleman named Ben Case, seemed to be in charge. "The deer are concerned that the woods are so dry," John shared. "Our rainfall is half normal. Our snowpack from last year is gone. We are calling it extreme and dismal. For the first time in anybody's memory, we are seeing the bare ground where in past years it was covered by snow and ice year-round, Ben Case shared. I've agreed to bring baled oats and a water trough. They suggested leaving it behind the ranger station. Ben looked to the other two, then said, "Yes, we have no hunting signs posted, and we will be able to watch out for them. Our count is 4,000 deer and 7 herds of elk. To do this right, we will need a big truck of oats and several watering troughs." Jenny had joined the men and had taken John's hand in hers. "We will make it so. Gentlemen, this is my wife, Jenny. You heard it from the boss. We will make it so." John snickered. "You guys from Seattle?" Ben Case asked. John nodded. "It's not there anymore. We are relocating in Omak. I've heard tell that someone bought up all of the property. There won't be room for all of you." Ben was concerned. "I'm the one who bought up 50,000 to 60,000 acres. We will have the room." John smiled. "We need to get... Oh, any idea where those helicopters came from? Ask the Indians, they'll tell you. The Indians have a valley where they raise buffalo. Mercenaries moved into the valley and threatened to wipe the Indians out if they bothered them. By the way, how did you bring those choppers down?" Ben asked. "We can reflect anything that is shot at us," John said while looking at Jenny. "Oh, another thing, we may be visited by a North Korean army. Be ready to leave if you get word they are coming. Good luck to you, folks. This is day one of a new world," Ben Case said as he waved goodbye. "Johnny, you want to alert everyone?" John moved over to the driver's seat and checked all the instruments as Johnny alerted everyone of their moving out. "Johnny, let everyone know we see the time as a couple of minutes to 3. We will honk the horn in 2 minutes." "Got it, Dad." Johnny then passed the word over the radio. John looked over to the left behind some trees. There was a mother black bear with a cub. John got strange bad men hiding in the forest. John sent a thank you to the mother bear. Then he asked, "How can we help you?" "Talk with Mother Earth. We need rain to bring fish." John heard and replied, "I will, Mother Bear. Love to you and your baby." "Dad, I heard some of that," Johnny shared. "I did too," Teresa added. Jenny, are you all right?" Teresa asked. More than a bit concerned, slowly Jenny opened her eyes. "Yeah." Jenny smiled like the cat that ate the canary. "Someday we won't need cell phones. I think I sent the sniper and his spotter a text to call off the shoot." Before John honked the horn, a little water truck designed for off-road travel moved out in front of John, heading towards the smoke in the direction of the 2 downed helicopters. John waited another minute and then honked the bighorn of the RV. John got the big bus up to speed and turned to Johnny. "Anything on the radio?" "No, Dad. Look over there." Johnny was pointing to the 2 pieces of junk that had fallen out of the sky. Both were burning, but it did not look like anything that the Rangers could not handle. John eased the fuel pedal down until they were cruising at speed. After about 15 minutes, he looked down and realized they had traveled 10 miles. He wondered if the end of the convoy had started moving yet. He got a no. He wondered how many had started the training. He heard 827,039. He then wondered how many people were still left on Earth. He got 6,046,459,126, and then the number changed up by 1. Somebody was just born. Welcome to planet Earth, new person. As messages continued to flash in his head, he understood winter might be hard this year. Planet Earth might even lose another billion humans before the harvest next fall. He was deep in his thoughts when Johnny moved and got his attention. "Dad, have you been able to control anything like the rocket before today?" Johnny asked. John glanced in the direction of his son. "No." "Have you ever been able to talk with animals before today?" Johnny was asking with a look of deep concentration. "A little bit, but nothing so loud and clear like today." John was focusing on the road as they hit some turns and were going up a grade. "You're still learning," Johnny said to his dad. "I guess I am. I was thinking, I bet I can do that with a tennis ball as I did with the rocket today. If I can do that, then we can teach this." John was working the bus through some more turns. "If you are still learning, then there is a chance for me to learn what I need to know." Johnny said it more to hear it himself than for anybody else. "I agree with that." John almost laughed. When you learn all you need to know, teach it to me, please. Johnny looked at his father. You make it look so easy. Johnny, you are comparing apples and oranges. When I was your age, you are better than I was. And when you are my age now, you will be worlds ahead of me then. John said proudly, I've heard for a long time that I was to be the Christ of the planet. Since the first time I'd heard it, I have gone through 2 divorces. I've had 2 major medical concerns, one ending up with me getting a pacemaker, and my relationship with you had a very sad period. When you were born, we were told that anything I did, you would take it to the world. It is during your time as president that Gaia will be born. During your life as King Arthur, you were much beloved. You'll do fine. I'm sorry for the disruption in our relationship, Dad, Johnny shared. No, I manifested that the same as you. I take responsibility for my life. Nothing else works. John took a deep breath. I've lost my home twice. I got so angry with God that my right knee got down to just a fraction of its capability. I had a hard time even sitting on the toilet. Driving was almost impossible. And I remember thinking, I'm supposed to be the Christ? John was feeling the anger in his right knee again. What's the mission? What's this all about? Where are we headed? Johnny wanted to know. By graduating 5 billion humans through the ascension process. It is a necessary step on the pathway to becoming a Christ. John had said this last, loud enough for Jenny and Teresa to hear. Wow, Dad, that feels like the truest thing I have ever heard in my life. Johnny was looking at the smiling faces of Teresa and Jenny. Thank you, Dad, for manifesting a son 33 years ago. You, me, and our sons need to put this world back together. We are to make it safe for Gaia. John shared, my guess is we will become her. John thought for a second. We will become part of her quick response team. Maybe I will get a day off. Everyone laughed. John felt like he had a family again. He realized how much he had been missing this. He also felt like he was fulfilling his purpose in life. He looked in the rearview mirror and found his mate. She stopped talking and looked at him in the reflection. Her thought was, that man, his heart is big enough to love the world. Less than 20 miles from the town of Okanogan, they passed the Loop Loop Pass. Johnny looked up something on his phone. Dad, it looks like we are down about 500 feet. John glanced at his son with his phone. He wondered if there was anything that phone could not find out. Just then his phone rang. He handed it to Johnny. Hello, this is Johnny. Yes, we just passed the sign for Loop Loop Pass. We are coming down the hill. Okay, I see your follow me sign. Okay, you are moving out. We are happy to see you, Captain Frank. We will follow you anywhere. Johnny laughed. Well, maybe not there. Is there room for everybody? I'll pass the message along, 10 to 4. Johnny hung up and picked up the radio. Attention, attention. We have picked up a pilot vehicle that will guide us into Omak. When we get to the temporary parking lot, the RVs will be put together and everyone else will be separate. In the next 2 days, the RVs will be moved to a more permanent place. Johnny took a deep breath. We are almost to our new home. Sounds good. Johnny out. Johnny looked to his dad and then to Jenny and Teresa. We're almost home. John had his hands full as they lost over 2,000 feet of elevation in 10 miles. As they slowed at the bottom of a hill to make a sharp turn, I hope everyone has good brakes. Johnny announced to his family with a smile, it looks like about another 1,000 feet of elevation to drop into Omak. As they crossed the county border of Okanogan, Johnny made another announcement. Attention, we got about 5 miles to go. Johnny turned to his dad. How many men does Captain Frank have with him? He has a crew of 50 men and women with him. We can relax. We are in good hands. John laughed. Sounds like an insurance commercial. John could smell the burning of the brake pads. As they passed through Okanogan and then into Omak, they looked at all the scenery, pointing out to each other the river, the grocery store, and quite a few abandoned buildings. They took 2 more turns and John followed Captain Frank into a large flat space. Captain Frank pulled across the lot and then crossed into another lot, which was slightly smaller in size. There were men and women all the way pointing and waving him on. John finally came to a stop in the corner of the lot. John also noticed a big tent across the street. There were 5 signs across the front of the tent, proclaiming that they had food and drinks. John sighed deeply and laughed. A beer sounds really good. How long has it been since you had a beer? Johnny asked. I think I bought a 6-pack last summer. John laughed. God used to like having a cold beer on a hot day when I was in Vietnam. Seattle doesn't get that hot. John could see a sign that read 99 degrees. This is not going to be like Seattle. Not all change is good. The Earth lost almost all its major cities and nearly 1 billion people in just a couple of days. Those that like politicians may be sad to learn that they were all gone. Worldwide, 95% of the ruling class had been wiped out by either sinking lands or fires from earthquakes. City mayors and county executives were it for any past government authority. The people would find they were free to form a government by the people for the people once again.